Greetings and welcome everyone to part 2 of the Terra podcast, 4-part event of my Power Rangers Lightning Collection wish list with episode 346. And tonight I want to talk about, like I did yesterday afternoon, or whenever I released the last episode of the podcast for my potential Power Rangers Lightning Collection wish list. Yesterday I did the Rangers, and today we do the villains, because as promised I was going to do the villains that I have a part of my wish list for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection. Although I had done a top 10 villains most wanted sort of video for my top list video series on the channel. I already did pick some of those following villains in that video, but I'm also going to include them in podcast form for those who didn't see my top 10 most wanted villains for the Lightning Collection video I did back in 2020. Like I promised before the video and even this video's creation, that a long time ago, looking back on all of the past Power Ranger villains, toy releases like Rita Revolto or Diabolico or Zeltrax or any of those villains that we've had, over the years before we got whatever villains for, action figures for villains like Void Knight or Doom Tower from Dino Fury or Blaze and Evox from Beast Morphers. I had always wanted to figure out what would be my top most wanted Power Rangers Lightning Collection figures for villains. And although, like I mentioned, there's going to be some of the following of those villains that I'm going to include by season, just like I did before in that top 10 video, which which is kind of redundant now, but I feel like with this video's existence, I rather delve into more on, a little bit about why I want those villains as my most wanted Power Rangers Lightning Collection figures from them, if Hasbro will get around doing them. Because the agenda is with Hasbro with the Lightning Collection for the action figures, they're mostly focusing on putting out more of Ranger teams before they can finish up any more villains. But they have slowly been putting out monsters, which I'll delve into next time after the villains wish list. And for monsters, when I'll talk about more Lightning Collection monsters, because the monsters are going to be bigger than your usual 6-inch Lightning Collection figure for a Power Ranger or villain, so it makes chronological sense to do monsters next after this. But I do want to do the villains first and foremost before I do monsters or villain foot soldiers. But I feel like if I do one about the villain foot soldiers and then probably do a wish list for like anything from Power Rangers, like any Lightning Collection wish list for roleplay weapons or Ranger helmets, villain helmets, that sort of thing. Because Hasbro is planning on what I love about the Power Rangers Lightning Collection so far is that they are going to expand the Lightning Collection line for us adult collectors to have every single piece of Power Rangers paraphernalia there is, with like action figures of all the teams, action figures of all the villains and their respective factions, action figures of all the villain foot soldiers, action figures of all the monsters from over the years, Megazords for the Zord Ascension line, which I'll do way later down the line, but not today or this week. And you name it, and even all of the Lightning Collection potential Morphers, and maybe later I'll probably do a Lightning Collection wish list for Morphers, since we already got the Power Morpher already happening, even though we still haven't got a Tommy Oliver variant of the Power Morpher just yet in the Lightning Collection, but we will likely soon whenever they announce that. But anyway, I want to get on with the villains and, chill with the villains for a bit, pun intended, and talk about what villains I do want from the Power Rangers Lightning Collection. Okay, like last time, we got to start with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So far for Mighty Morphin, we have Lord Zed twice, Goldar twice, Rita just once, in only way, even though it's kind of hard getting Rita now, but since that Rita and Zed wedding pack from 2 years ago is very expensive right now. Scorpina just came out. Finster came out. The putties have come out. The Tanga had came out, but again, I have to excise the foot soldiers. But the only villains so far we don't have from mainline Mighty Morphin, and again, I'm going to excise the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for villains from the Mighty Morphin Boom comics, or like Lord Draken and Ranger Slayer, and any villains that would potentially be in the Lightning Collection from any of the Power Ranger movies, like Ivan Ooze from the 1995 Mighty Morphin movie. So I'm only focusing once again on Prime Universe Power Ranger villains that exist within the main universe of Power Ranger shows as of this video. If I want to do a video, for like Rangers and villains from the movies and comics, that will have to come a much rather later time. And what figures of that I would have in my wish list. So in the main line of Mighty Morphin villain figures for the Lightning Collection, we only have Rita, Zed, Goldar, Scorpina, Finster, and that's as close as we got. But we don't have Squat, Babu, Rito, and Master Vile. Those are the only 4 villains missing right now. But we will get Rito, Master Vile, and the other, that being Squat and Babu down the line later. But of all of the Mighty Morphin villains that I've been wanting really more, since I finally am glad that Scorpina finally had a release, because I figured Hasbro must have heard my, read my mind about a Scorpina figure, since, I think they probably saw my video about that when I did that top list video, but still, I think they must have read my mind about it. So anyway, the Mighty Morphin villain for my wish list, well, actually it's 2, because I'm doing both Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Alien Rangers, since Master Vile was in the latter half of the mainline Mighty Morphin Power Rangers before going into the Alien Rangers miniseries. So both Rito and Master Vile are on my wish list for MMPR, because now, nothing against Squat and Babu, but mainly when focusing on Season 3 Mighty Morphin, I really want Rito Revolto as a new action figure. Although, now looking at the image as shown in the video, I don't know in terms of when they do Rito Revolto and his Lightning Collection figure, I'm not quite sure if they should go by how Rito looked on the television show or in the render of his character render from the Legacy War game. Because, actually when I look at Rito from the Power Rangers Legacy Wars game, he actually looked more menacing and intimidating character-wise, but he's still a goofball. But that's what I love about Rito. And I don't know if they should go with the muted color scheme like his Legacy Wars character render or so, because I really do want this Rito. Or if not, they can probably go by how Rito really looked authentically from the television show, and how brightly colored with half gray, half camo colored he was in the series, because I really wanted Rito. Because I remember a long time ago, back when the 3rd season of Power Rangers happened, and when I was 3 years old, in 1995, 1996, when Season 3 and Season 3 Alien Rangers and Zeo both happened, I did have action figures for Master Vile and Rito Revolto growing up. And even though Rito did have an action figure back in the day, because I do remember. And so did Master Vile, although Master Vile didn't have much articulation. But I personally wish that, I don't know what else can you do with Master Vile. Maybe they'll just make him too inanimate like Rita, because given the long gown to her dress and with the boots sticking out, because, we hardly ever, whenever I see the majority of Rita Repulsa's appearances, like in the show or for some merchandise, like her Samurai release figure or that unreleased then versus now pack of Rita with the boots not being visible, or even the recent Lightning Collection figure of Rita where we do see her boots. But, Rito, I must wonder how they're going to pull off his look for the Lightning Collection, because that's what I want to know. And because, Rito can go very well with the rest of the bunch, because he is part of Mighty Morphin's colorful but yet lovable goofball pantheon of villains with Rita, Zed, Goldar, and the gang. So that's probably why, I must have him. Now, Squat and Babu, again, I've wanted to put them on the list because I know some people have been wondering why I didn't choose Squat and Babu, even though they're also goofballs too. But they didn't contribute as much. I only want villains in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that actually fought the Rangers directly. Now, I know that Rita was released to come with her hubby, Lord Zed. Yeah, I had to go there and say that because they got married canonically because parent complaints. And I really want Rito to be with his sister Rita, and when I ever do get my hands on that Rita and Zed wedding pack somewhere, even though I already have a Lord Zed figure, I already did a review on that. But if they ever do a standalone Rita Repulsa release outside of the wedding pack, since for those who couldn't afford that back in 2020, we could get an opportunity to get Rita again. And so then also when I have Rito in hand, I can have him with Goldar because, canonically, Rito and Goldar, they did had chemistry with each other despite they were the two stooges of Rita and Zed's forces, and also when dealing with the Power Rangers. So that's probably what I loved about Rito during the third season, and even when Rito and Goldar were no longer the focus during Zeo. So that's probably why I want Rito really, really bad. Now, as for Vile himself, Rita and Rito's father, Master Vile, he would be a nice addition to the Lightning Collection as well because, he's part the latter half of Season 3 with the mainline Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And then as we transition into the Alien Ranger stuff, he was only in the Alien Ranger miniseries for 2 episodes, and then he just disappeared for a while. And his little appearance in the first episode of Zeo when the Machine Empire was attacking Rita and Zed, and then his little cameo in the first episode of Power Rangers in Space, and that was like the end of him. But Master Vile will be a great addition because we got to have, since I was bringing up Rito, and it would make sense to have Master Vile, Rita, and Rito's father in the piece, so that way whenever I get my hands on Rita for an action figure, and then when Rito gets created, and so that way both Rita and Rito can have their father in my collection for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection for the Mighty Morphin villains and even Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers villains, because Rita and Zed are part of MMPR and MMAR, so therefore, and even with Master Vile, so therefore it's just the same thing. And since the Alien Rangers didn't have really much of a main threat outside of Hydro Hog, but Hydro Hog is a monster, so he doesn't really technically count. Because again, when I talk about monsters that I would like to have in the Lightning Collection for Power Rangers Lightning Collection monsters, and when I do add either of the monsters that the Alien Rangers fought, like Aquafine or Hydro Hog, I will delve into those. Okay, Power Rangers Zeo. Well, since like I said, we've already did the Ranger team. Like I said last time, I was going to talk about what villains I would like to see in the Lightning Collection for Zeo. We do have the Cogs, but the Cogs do not count. They're not villains. They're villain foot soldiers. So the Cogs are out of the question. So with the Machine Empire, there were a lot of opportunities. And, I was thinking, would it be nice if they did 2 packs for like Mondo and Queen Machina and King Mondo, and as well as Princess Archerina and Prince Gasket as 2 packs? Or what they probably should do is put the Zeo villains, in 2 packs rather than having them individually, like Prince Sprocket in a separate release, or Gasket separately, or Clank and Orbis. Well, even though Orbis is an accessory to Clank, and or Queen Machina separately. So that was probably why, that's what I was thinking. Because now on this list, I was going through what I want to have in the Lightning Collection for Power Rangers Zeo for villains. I wasn't sure whether if I wanted to do the main patriarch, that being King Mondo, with his wife Machina, but I was like, well, you know what? as much as I want Mondo and Machina, I was really betting my $50 on Gasket and Archerina instead. So yeah, Gasket and Archerina are my most wanted villains in Zeo for the Lightning Collection. Because while Mondo and Machina, well, it's obvious that they're going to likely do them. And I was thinking about with Gasket and Archerina, the next time they do them, they should probably have them in a 2-pack, much like the Rita and Zed wedding pack. And if they do Mondo and Machina as a 2-pack, since they are already husband and wife, and the same go with Gasket and Archerina being in a relationship, sort of semi, quasi, whatever, married, but you get the point. So I would like to see a 2-pack, a Lightning Collection 2-pack of Gasket and Archerina being developed, if ever, because I want to see how, if they ever do make those, and the same go for Mondo and Machina once more. Zeo was out, and then we go into Power Rangers Turbo for some of my picks, or one pick for my wish list for villains for the Lightning Collection for Turbo. Because again, you know, like I said last time when I chose my pick for Ranger for my wish list for Zeo for the Lightning Collection, you know, like I said, Power Rangers Turbo is still one of the most polarizing seasons among the fan base. And as much as I do want figures of the Turbo Rangers, and well, we already have Phantom Ranger, and whenever we do get the Blue Centaurian, but potentially, I've been thinking about the villains for a while, because like even when I was scrummaging through my wish list, because again, anybody from Turbo, not Elgar, I don't want nothing to do with Elgar, because you know how much I hate him as a character, but he still has to be a part of the collection nevertheless, because when they do these villains later on in the Lightning Collection by season, I know I'm going to have no choice but to get Elgar. I don't even know what head sculpt they'll use of him, either his Sentai counterpart sculpt of his face or the US version sculpt of his face when we get around him. But, you know, there were some thoughts that I had in my wish list for Turbo for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection personally. And now I have been thinking about it for a while. Do I want General Havoc more? Do I want Rygog more? Or do I want the main female big bad of Turbo, Divatox herself? As a matter of fact, Divatox is on my wish list, because recall back 25 years ago when Power Rangers Turbo's toy line did happen, when we had that and the movie, that they had an action figure for Divatox around the time of the first wave of action figures for Turbo. And I bet you that when they even did the action figures for the villains and what little monsters they had to kick off Turbo, they probably didn't sell well. And of course, especially Divatox, having her with an action figure back then was quite a gamble, because knowing the fact that at that time, and you know how they did action figures back in the day for female characters in Power Rangers, they went ahead with a Divatox figure, but knowing the fact, you know, given the zeitgeist of action figures for female characters and anything back in the day when I was growing up, they never really made the female characters look proper, but they always made them look like, you know, clay-made men trying to impose as women. Even no worse than back when we had, like, Kenner Hasbro's toy line for the Batman and Robin movie 25 years ago. Remember, back in the Batman and Robin movie toy line, they had, of course, Poison Ivy's action figure that came complete with Bane. Actually, not really. But that Poison Ivy figure actually looked more like a dude in drag with red hair that looked like a Veronica Lake type hair and green overalls, and trying to pass off as imposing as Poison Ivy. So there was no way in the heck, even when I looked at Divatox's action figure on some old photos from whoever was selling any old Power Rangers Turbo stuff on eBay, mostly the action figures, and when it came to Divatox's figure, you know, I wasn't sure whether it's supposed to, the figure sculpt was supposed to, you know, replicate Carol Hoyt's Divatox or Hillary Shepard's Divatox, even when I looked at that old action figure of her. And it's been 25 years since she even had a figure. And if we can get a Rita Repulsa figure that looked more authentically like the character from the television show, hopefully we get a Divatox figure that looks more like the Divatox from the TV series. And, you know, again, she was, of course, the final female Power Rangers villain, or the only one at the time thus far, until Poisandra and Madame Odius way later, decades later, in Dino Charge and Ninja Steel to get action figures from Bandai. Rita wouldn't finally, of course, get an action figure until Samurai. And then, yeah, there was that canceled Rita Repulsa figure from the main universe bundled with her 2017 movie counterpart from a canceled Then vs. Now pack, because that was when Bandai, you know, was wrapping up their toy license with Power Rangers, as they called it quits 4 years ago. And we never did, of course, got that TV show authentic Rita Repulsa figure from Bandai, but luckily we got one from Hasbro. Now, I'm not really sure how they should pull off Divatox as an action figure from Hasbro for Power Rangers' Lightning collection. And, you know, in terms of the likeness of the character, you know, like, if you can't get either Hillary Shepard or Carol Hoyt's likenesses for either of the two, you know, for either of the two for Divatox, they can just might as well just get some public domain woman that probably looks like some Lady Gaga looking woman, whatever, and just pass that off as Divatox. But you gotta, of course, you know, since Hasbro owns Power Rangers, because, you know, the way how I look at a lot of the majority of the action figures, and especially when we start getting more of these, the more human looking villain figures we get, like Rancic or Trakina, or more Astronoma's figures or whatever, Vipra, figures down the line, they're going to likely have the villains look less like the actors from who played the villains, you know, face villains from the television show, and rather more like, if you take like some of the renders, like you know, next thing you know, in the next couple of months, what do they add Divatox in the Legacy War game, and then I see Divatox in the Legacy Wars game, and her likeness doesn't look anything like either Carol Hoyt or Hillary Shepard doing the character in the game. But also for the action figure, when we get a brand new Divatox figure, it has to still look like Hillary Shepard, because I actually was leaning more into Hillary Shepard's Divatox, because she was the one that molded the character more than Carol, because Carol, I think she did better with Demetria than she did Divatox during the first chunk of Turbo when Tommy's team was around, and a little early of TJ's team's time as Rangers with Carol Hoyt's Divatox. And then by the time General Havoc came along, Hillary Shepard returned to reprise the role for the rest of Turbo, and then for the few episodes of In Space she appeared in. So yeah, because I was just betting on my 2 cents, because I want a new you know, I never had an action figure of Divatox, but I do have, believe it or not, a vintage figure of Rygog laying around from in one of my old vintage Power Ranger figures that I collected since as a collectible off of Amazon since 2012 or something. And it was a long time ago since I got that Rygog figure, and you know, I figure since I got that Rygog figure, I probably should have got a vintage, you know, got that Divatox figure, and then even that Visceron figure, and that what is that monster, that frog monster that they had from the Shift in the Turbo 3-parter. Let me know in the comments if you know the name of the monster. I know what the monster looks like. But you know, they even had a monster action figure of that monster. But still, you know, I think I have ragged on about Divatox a lot, but I think maybe the vet in this apartment living room doesn't want me talking about the pirate queen of evil, because you know how much, you know, people just really hate Divatox in all of her glory and in the fan base's guts. Okay, so for Power Rangers in Space, looking at so far with the Lightning Collection line, we only have 2 Astronema figures. Recently got in an Ecliptor figure, which is bundled with that Astronema from that Amazon exclusive Astronema Ecliptor 2-pack that you can get on Amazon for about $50. But we also have the Psycho Rangers, but again, the monster figures for them I'll talk about which of one of the Psycho Ranger monster forms I would like to have in the Lightning collection for monsters. We don't have, okay, Quantron, again, I'm excluding foot soldiers here. Now, when they do In Space for, like, Dark Spectre, but Dark Spectre is basically Malagor from the Power Rangers Turbo movie, but modified as Dark Spectre and given the wear of the costume in show. But if they do Dark Spectre, you know, or Malagor, if they do an action figure for him, he would just likely be under the Monsters line for the Lightning Collection, because Malagor was a monster in the Power Rangers Turbo movie as the final monster the Rangers had to fight in that movie. And then have him be repurposed as Dark Spectre for In Space, because again, originally back when Power Rangers Turbo was wrapping up, and given our little given our, you know, iconic piece of behind the scenes info for In Space, that Dark Spectre was originally supposed to be the Emperor Exhaustus main villain from Turbo Sentai counterpart Car Ranger, but that monster would later, but Exhaustus's costume will be used for the monster of Gold Goyle, who was only in Sentai footage only, since they couldn't get the original costume of him for Turbo in its finale, or use him as Dark Spectre outright for Power Rangers In Space. So we're not going to count Dark Spectre, Malagor, Dark Spectre in this. But if we do want to get Malagor or Dark Spectre, he would have to likely be under the Lightning Collection Monsters line of monster figures. So the only villain I would say from In Space's real pantheon of villains outside of Astronema, Ecliptor, and the Psycho Rangers. Now, in my wish list, you know, for the In Space villains, Dark Conda, obviously, because Dark Conda, I definitely want him real bad. If we got Astronema, Ecliptor, Dark Conda should be the third villain of the piece of that, you know, part of the United Alliance of Evil and the In Space side of the United Alliance of Evil with Astronema's forces. Even though Dark Conda was a 2-bit traitor to Ecliptor and Astronema, and all the times that Ecliptor cannot outright stand Dark Conda, but I always wanted Dark Conda as an action figure for so long. I mean, as much as I've, you know, again, we already got the Psycho Rangers and Astronema, but Dark Conda, I've always wanted him as an action figure, even back when we had the original toys for In Space by Bandai, back in 1998, 24 years ago. And Dark Conda never got an action figure, but the only villain that we got for an action figure from that time for In Space was, again, Ecliptor. Although Ecliptor's new action figure from the Lightning Collection doesn't come with his little cape. Maybe when they do a standalone Ecliptor figure, they'll give Ecliptor that cape during his introductory episodes, like Save Our Ship, for instance. And even though we already got that red Ecliptor out, and since, you know, there's 2 Ecliptor figures, but of course it should be 4 more, because, like, 2 more, because you got Ecliptor with the his regular non-cape form, you got Ecliptor in his Fury Red form, but the next 2 Ecliptor figures should be him with the cape, same figure from the Astronema 2-pack release with him, but with the cape, and then finally Cyborg Ecliptor. When he had the cybernetic implants, much like Astronema. As much as I also want another Astronema where she was full-on evil with the cybernetics as well, but I know a lot of people have been betting on an Astronema with all the different wig appearances, but I was like, man, I feel I'm going to be paying so much more for Astronema that I can't even keep up. But Dark Conda also had 2 or 3 forms within the show. You got his main form, his Dark Lipter form for 2 episodes, even though the second time he did it was brief. And then, of course, when he went full-on berserk with all those spikes and horns sticking out of him during the Flashes of Dark Conda in the Rangers Mega Voyage episodes in the show. And those 3 figures of Dark Conda, I do want to add to my collection, even though I still want the prime form of Dark Conda before he went all Dark Lipter, or that berserker Dark Conda in my favorite part of the season with his flashes of Dark Conda. Yeah, saying Dark Conda's name is a lot of fun, isn't it? So we switch out from the Zordon era like we did last video. So on to post-Zordon, Disney, Neo Saban, and Hasbro eras, starting with, of course, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy for the Lightning Collection. Because like I just said, you know, back in the last video, since we are, you know, with the Green Ranger soon to come out, and then the Yellow and Pink Rangers would hopefully get their, you know, Lightning Collection treatments out and going, and within 6 months after Green has been out. But like I said back in the last video, talking about if we do get the Pink Ranger with Caron's head versus like Trakina in a 2-pack, we wasn't sure whether if they will do that, but that depends. And you know, again, I've been longing for a lot of brand new action figures for the season for so long. Yeah, even though we already got that, you know, we had, you know, the Red Ranger 2 times, Magna Defender, and the Blue Ranger, then the green. Well, green is coming, yellow and pink will in the foreseeable future. But the villains, okay, now we're speaking about villains because I, you know, knowing the fact how much I love Lost Galaxy, but I just felt like, you know, yeah, we've had so many different options, but knowing the fact my only 3 villains that I ever liked about Lost Galaxy was Trakina, Deviant, and Villamax. The rest, I just don't care about all that much. You know, Scorpius, Captain Mutiny, all those guys, I really don't care for those, for the rest. Stingwingers, I'm not going to mention here because, again, they're foot soldiers to the villains. They're not really villains in general, in sense. Or not even Captain Mutiny's own foot soldiers. So, you know, again, you know, I've always talked about Lost Galaxy, and like whenever they do get around the villains for that season, for the Lightning Collection, I just really want, you know, I really want them to do Trakina, basically, because I've talked about this for years since they started this Lightning Collection, and even before Hasbro would start coming up with this Power Rangers Lightning Collection line. That I know I've been pestering it a little bit, you know, especially whenever I see Instagram live streams with her actress with a fan of hers, you know, especially a super fan. And I know that, you know, I had finally answered that question, you know, had that question answered, but the response I got was, well, that depends if they even got the rights to use her likeness, but knowing that Hasbro should, since they own everything Power Rangers. But that depends on who the owners of the material and stuff like that. But you know, again, you know, since we never really had a lot of action figures for the Lost Galaxy villains back when the season was airing. Same go for the rest of the other seasons before Dino Charge and Ninja Steel. But Lost Galaxy specifically, you know, the only villains we had for that season's toy line was Captain Mutiny and Barbarax. But why did they also advertise their figures earlier in their toy line, knowing that they would come way later down into the show? Because they wasn't sure whether if an action figure for Trakina or Villamax or Scorpius or whoever would sell, so they decided not to make figures for them. Only villains that were from the Sentai to, you know, that's part of Power Rangers as import to appear in the series. Now, again, you know, given that Trakina had like 5 or 6 6 different appearances. You got her base form, you got her form as a human, in the form of Tracy with the red business suit and all that and long hair, looking like some Victoria's Secret supermodel underneath that business suit. Then you know 90s Victoria's Secret supermodel under that business suit. Then you got Trakina in her Deviant form. Then you got Trakina in her mutant form, her green armored form, her Lightspeed Rescue appearance with her classic form, but with the mouthpiece covering up her face because they had to employ the change of the actress at the time, which I know I've complained about a lot in the past. And then, of course, her gigantic, if they do a Lightning Collection monster figure of Trakina and her gigantic demon monster, hentai monster tentacle monster form, you know, I know, tongue twisting that. But though, if they do a monster Trakina figure for the Lightning Collection monster stuff, that would be like the big piece of it all, or so. It would be like the most expensive monster figure for something Lost Galaxy / Lightspeed Rescue related, if they get around that. But particularly the base figure of Trakina in her prime form, when she didn't had her Deviant form or her Tracy form, human Tracy form, or any of her green forms, or her Lightspeed Rescue masked appearance. But with the prime foot figure of her, though, they got to go with Amy Miller's appearance with the character, because that is her character. She brought that character to life. And as much as I did a recent custom 12-inch action figure of Trakina for my upcoming Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film reboot, but with the likeness of a Hollywood actress that isn't Trakina's actress, part of the Power Rangers franchise and Power Ranger fandom family, if you will. But I wanted to, even though I went with an actress that, of course, based on my recent fan casting of an actress that does look similar to Amy, but now that the actress is over 40, how Hollywood, but I digress with that. But, I've always longed for wonder what the color scheme, also even what the color scheme for Trakina would be. Because given that she had this purple thing going on, but her outfit, in most shades, even when we see her on the Scorpion Stinger, I thought her costume was always black with some shades of purple, little bits of purple and some blue to there, and so, depending on the hues and shades of her costume. But it was always, the costume was, it was like dark purple, or faded dark purple with some shades of the blue to the outfit she always wore throughout her appearances in Lost Galaxy. We know the bug eyes for a fact are purple because, well, the fan film Trakina I'm doing has her with blackish blue bug eyes instead, giving a more scarier, intimidating feel. So I was wondering, should they do Trakina with a purple, not a brightly purple costume for her when they do her action figure, and even if they do that 2-pack with her versus Corone as the Pink Galaxy Ranger in a potential 2-pack between Trakina and Corone from their one-off unmorphed fight, when Corone wasn't the Pink Ranger yet. Remember from that iconic moment from the Protect the Quasar Saber episode, when Trakina would try to go all toe-to-toe with Corone on that mountaintop, and when she tried to have her near her death, and when she said those iconic words, never ever mess with Trakina. Remember that. But, the thing is, that's the Lightning Collection 2-pack I was referring to, but they also have to do, even later when Corone does become the Pink Ranger, then we have that little small encounter with that 2-pack. But even when they do that 2-pack, it will probably likely be pointless. By the time I would probably have that, just like the Psycho Red and Leo 2-pack that I got back 2 years ago and a half. Again, I've always wanted a Trakina action figure for so long. And hopefully I want them to do her really bad just to make Amy Miller at her Instagram handle at Trakina PRLG happy. So hopefully they do that, because but if they can't do her likeness, they can always just find an actress, come up with a stock face for her that will still look like Trakina, but just if you can't get Amy's likeness, or just because even when I looked at that recent Astronema figure from that Astronema 2-pack with Ecliptor recently, the way how they did the smile for that Astronema looked more like Trakina, but imposed as Astronema. With the purple wig Astronema, when I think about it. But it's still Astronema, but it's just the head sculpt, especially with the face sculpt of that Astronema, it did look more like a Trakina figure imposing as an Astronema figure. And I just felt like, man, and also even that likeness didn't hardly look anything like Melody Perkins on that figure, but I think they have to figure a way to do Trakina justice, just like I said about Divatox earlier. So hopefully when we do get that figure going, because I gotta have it, because you mess with Trakina, well, you know what's going to happen, right? Okay, Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue in their villains for the Lightning Collection. And as I've discussed, I really wanted to do the villains for that season, and and like I said about with Diabolico, probably sometime before the recording process of this. Now, as for Diabolico, since he's on my wish list, it's a possibility that they should do Diabolico bundled with the Titanium Ranger, although Titanium Ranger and Diabolico never fought, But when Ryan was the Titanium Ranger, when he was somewhat a bad guy for 2 episodes, and then he just reformed himself so quickly, petted out, and knowing the fact we should not copy Greenwood Evil, but with a silver suited Ranger, who is our Power Rangers only Ranger. And like Diabolico would be like bundled with the Titanium Ranger in some essence, you know, to emulate how he was always, you know, making Ryan do some bad stuff, you know, wait until his like 20th birthday to see his family again, and, you know, just wreak havoc and revenge against you know, Captain Mitchell, because I get that, you know, given the backstory with when Ryan when his dad and Dana were in that car crash, and when the car exploded, and then Diabolico Spirit grabs Ryan when he was a child, and you know the rest, and then how he abducted Ryan, and then he told Captain Mitchell he will not see his son again until he turned 20 years of age, and that's how he was, you know, and then when he grew up 20 years later, he had revenge against his father, even his daughter, for the fact that it seemed like Mitchell preferred his own only daughter over his own son. And even though then I do want Diabolico, and given also his beef with Olympius over the star power thing, and in spite of whatever loyalty that he had for, you know, Queen Banshira, until he started detrusting her when Queen Banshira went berserk, and, you know, and then again, it also would become an ally to the Rangers in the final episode of Lightspeed, when Queen Banshira tried to nearly take Carter down with her with the Tomb of the Demons in the final episode, and then when Diabolico did defeat Queen Banshira in the tomb, and allowing the Rangers to get out of there before the tomb would diminish into dust and ash. And that was the end of Diabolico, but I would love to have him in the Lightning Collection, despite he did have an action figure prior during Lightspeed Rescue's initial run in 2022 years ago. Now, Power Rangers Time Force and the villain choices for that. Since there's only 4 villains, you know, starting with this season, or actually, no, go back to Turbo, because General Havoc was just a last-minute addition, even though he was only around for 3 episodes. But for Time Force, you know, we only have 4 villains of that pack to do for villains. You got Rancic, Nadira, Gluto, and Frax to deal with. And since we still don't have our Rangers, maybe they should get ahead and go with a villain eventually for the Lightning Collection for Time Force. Because now I know a lot of people are going to, you know, think I'm going to choose Rancic for my wish list. As much as I do want Rancic, but my 2 cents are on Frax instead. Because, you know, Frax had an action figure prior back in 2001 during Time Force's run. And I do want a Lightning Collection figure of Frax, one that actually looks better than his original early 2000s figure release from Bandai. And one with better articulation, one that looked more authentic to the show, because what the heck was that with his action figure from back when Time Force still had their original line of action figures by Bandai America in 2001. So Frax, now I'm not sure whether if they should do a Frax where he had 2 different heads, where one with the closed eyes and the other head with him and his open, multiple red eyes open with him looking crazy. You know, something that I do want out of that kind of figure for Frax, for a Lightning Collection figure of him. And, you know, again, Frax was one of the strongest points for the villains, him and Rancic, although Rancic was the strongest villain in Time Force, until he later became an anti-hero, came the Wild Force team up with the Time Force Rangers the next season, of course, and blah, blah, blah. But Frax was very maniacal and such, and devious, much like Dark Honda and Deviant themselves before him. So I would love to have a figure of him if they ever have the chance to have him as an action figure. And yeah. Okay, then on to Power Rangers Wild Force for the Lightning Collection for my wish list. And since Wild Force, we have Gendrax, Toxica, Master Org, and the other 3 Duke Org generals, plus Orakagi, that ninja samurai shuriken faced Org. But of all of those guys, and why do you think I got this guy as the thumbnail for this video? the Lone Wolf Duke Orc himself, Zenaku, as my most wanted villain for Wild Force for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection. Since we got the Lunar Wolf Ranger, common sense they should do Zenaku, because even when we had the Lunar Wolf Ranger, and when I predicted they would do a Lunar Wolf Ranger sort of figure one day in the Lightning Collection, I thought we were going to get a Lunar Wolf Ranger that would be bundled with Zenaku, given their encounter outside of, you know, Merrick being possessed by the wolf mask in the Unfinished Business episode in the TV series. It turns out that was going to be false by the time we actually finally got Merrick, the Lunar Wolf Ranger, as a Lightning Collection figure to represent finally Wild Force, because it's time that Hasbro finally got to that season, despite how criminally underrated a season Wild Force is, even 20 years later. But Zenaku, I have always wanted an action figure of this guy, especially like a newer one. Even though I do recall he did have some action figures during Wild Force's original toy line from Bandai in 2002, but they were very scarce. But if they ever do a figure of him where he had grain articulation and whatever fabric they'll use to make his leather sort of coat jacket, you know, especially going down the streams of his legs, I would love to have that. And then also the way how they will sculpt his crescent blade and his face sculpt of the wolf mask. And then I don't know with his hair, like make the hair like molded plastic or something like that. But other than that, yeah, I do want a Zenaku figure really bad, because, you know, since the Lunar Wolf Ranger is out, I think it's time we finally did Zenaku for once, because he needs to be done. Alright, so then you go into Power Rangers Ninja Storm, and like Wild Force, you know, there's that many choices of villains that I would like to have, you know, as much as I would like to have a new Zurgane figure, since I used to have an action figure of Zurgane and a Kelzak foot soldier back in the day. But Shubo, Lothor and them, and even Motordrome and the rest, I would love to have as action figures in the Lightning Collection for Ninja Storm. But if there's one villain from Ninja Storm I would love to have, and even based on, like I said in my top 10 video, even though I had two choices from Ninja Storm, Motordrome or Vexicus, but I rather go for Vexicus a lot more, because Vexicus was more interesting visually to me, and well, just like Motordrome, even though Motordrome was kind of like the Willem Dafoe Green Goblin from Spider-Man, but for a Power Rangers villain, which I did like out of Motordrome from Ninja Storm, given his Green Goblin from Spider-Man 1-esque design. Very so soon in a first fully blown produced Disney season of Power Rangers. But Vexicus, with his color shades of black and silver, has that menacing shark theme going for him, and that bulging eyeball sticking out of his visor. You know, I really do want Vexicus, because he would go well with, you know, when I said about the Ninja Storm Red Ranger figure, like I said last episode, if they ever do Shane as the Ninja Storm Red Ranger, and also emulate what, you know, with the two figures, if they do a Vexicus figure in the Lightning Collection and try to recreate how Shane battled Vexicus when he was saving the Carmanian Skyla, you know, I know I keep getting that name a little tongue-tied and mixed up at times, because again, that was that episode two-parter about Shane's character development. That was actually his highlight. And Vexicus I've always wanted as an action figure. You know, even when I heard about the possibility of Lightning Collection figures for all Power Rangers and their villains, but the villains are being put aside for later until all the Power Ranger teams are done. But when they do get around all of Ninja Storm's characters, and when they do after they're done with the team, get with the villains, because I do want a Vexicus to go toe-to-toe with my potential Ninja Storm Red Ranger figure in my collection. And then we go into Power Rangers Dino Thunder for my wish list, since Dino Thunder only has 3 prime villains. The evil White Ranger clone does not count, so put him aside. But when we think about the 3 principal villains of Dino Thunder, when I did this wish list, I was wondering whether if I should do Mesogog, Elsa, or Zeltrax according to my wish list, and going by the fact that there's only 3 main villains. If they did Elsa, of course, there's 2 different hairstyles she had. One with the braided short hair in her first villainous appearance. And then later, the longer ponytail-haired Elsa, later on, up until around the final episode of Dino Thunder. And then Mesogog, since Mesogog had two different forms, I don't know if they should do a standalone Anton Mercer figure. When we do get the three different Mesogog type figures, you got his main form, his Anton Mercer form, and also his final form from the final episode of Dino Thunder. Zeltrax also had multiple forms too, and that's why I have Zeltrax as my most wanted villain figure for Dino Thunder for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection, because since I've already mentioned Tommy as the Black Dino Ranger in the Rangers edition of the four-parter, for the Villains edition, it would make sense, since if I want Tommy as the Black Dino Thunder Ranger, I gotta have him facing Zeltrax, because Zeltrax and Tommy had a long history, even leading up to Dino Thunder and right around after the many times Tommy was a Power Ranger prior, before he became a paleontologist for Reefside High School and became a Ranger again and a mentor for his new team of Rangers of Connor, Kira, Trent, and Ethan. But Zeltrax, I really want as a Lightning Collection figure for Dino Thunder once we got the team. But I think before they do Mesogog and Elsa, they got to do Zeltrax first, because Zeltrax is probably going to be the most highly demanded villain in the Lightning Collection for when Dino Thunder is out and done for the team. And then when we get the three villains, not sure if they should do another White Ranger, like this time, like if this is the cloned one, but no, it'll be kind of pointless. But even like Zeltrax's son Goldenrod or something, his son from that one-off episode. And of course, yeah, you got Zeltrax in his hyper form, which appeared in an episode or two of Dino Thunder, and there's two different Zeltrax figures out, so maybe they should debate which Zeltrax should they release first. But although I'm betting on the regular Zeltrax before we get the hyper version of the same character. Okay, then you go into Power Rangers SPD, and we need to talk about Emperor Grum. When we had the Wave 6 of the Lightning Collection, we originally was supposed to get Emperor Grum with the wave that consisted of Zack as the Black Mighty Morphin Ranger, and when we also had In Space Yellow and Red Zeo. Grum was rumored to be part of Lightning Collection Wave 6 alongside those three Rangers, but we ended up in substitute with another Goldar because of the high demand of more MMPR figures once again, which, yeah, I was disappointed at the time because Grum was rumored to be the next villain to include with three other Rangers. I thought that Hasbro made plans that they would do in some waves a Lightning Collection, like one villain per wave with three other Rangers, with whatever three Rangers they choose for wave 6, 7, 8, or whatever. But it seemed like they slowed down on the villains and make just only primarily all waves should focus on all Rangers, starting with wave 8. And that's probably why we haven't been getting the villains. I know that I have to have my patience about this. But Emperor Grum was supposed to be in Wave 6 with Mighty Morphin Black, In Space Yellow, and Red Zeo. Tommy is the Red Zeo Ranger, and Ashley is In Space Yellow, and Zack with his Season 2 hairstyle for the Wave 6 release of MMPR Black. But we should have gotten Emperor Grum instead of that other Goldar, the Goldar without the wings, even though we did have the Goldar from GameStop with the winged Goldar, which is very expensive these days now since I want Emperor Grum because he was a very massive adversary for the SPD Rangers, especially a huge adversary, a huge, well-known, blacklisted adversary for Doggy Kruger, and after what Grum had done to his planet and his forces kidnapping his wife Icenia and stuff, his entire Trubian Empire just did pretty much everything imaginable. But again, Grum needs to happen, and for good this time. Alright, so on Power Rangers Mystic Force, now for my wish list of villains, because now Mystic Force's villains are a group of Power Ranger villains I hardly ever talk about, and even with the Jungle Fury villains. But Mystic Forces villains, I was torn between, like, should I have Korag on this list or Necroli? But, you know, Mordecon, you know, again, even he's a crappy villain, but he's still part of the series nevertheless. And then even the 10 Terrors, but the 10 Terrors are like more like monsters and villains both at the same time, and wherever they lean in between. But since we have the 10 Terrors, we got Mordecon, and we got Imperius. But I was thinking more like wishing I would have Imperius more rather, because yeah, Mordecon sucked, while Imperius was the better villain of Mystic Force before we had the 10 Terrors. I really enjoyed Imperius in Mystic Force, especially during where he shined the most as a villain in the 3-parter Dark Wish. And in the way how, like, his forces with the 3 monsters that he had, the Battle of the Rangers during the Dark Wish 3-parter, and then have his way of trying to get, when the Rangers were nonchalant, abusing Genji, you know, and wanting Genji's magic to take the easy way out and stuff. And when the monsters from that 3-parter would take Genji's lamp to Imperius, and then have Genji being forced to make to grant the you know, with Imperius granting the wish from the genie, wishing that the Mystic Force Rangers were no more, and all of Briarwood and the entire universe would be completely all in nothing but darkness, no good magic inhibited, just all dark magic all around the Earth. And basically, Imperius was kind of like the Ivan Ooze of the Prime Universe, and I think that's probably why I want Imperius in my collection of Mystic Force stuff in the future for the Power Rangers Lightning collection. And because there's just something about his design I like. Yeah, he's a mummy-themed general trader type villain, but I really do want him in the collection before I get anyone like, let's say, well, Korag, if you will. Now, back to Power Rangers Operation Overdrive. Oh my god. You know, again, last time I did the Pink Ranger, and like I said back in my 20 years of Disney era Rangers retrospective video, last month, I said about how, like, the only 3 characters I only cared about in Overdrive was the Pink Ranger, the Butler for the supporting characters, and the Fear Cats. And when knowing most of the majority of the characters from Operation Overdrive are, like, the absolute worst batch of characters I've seen on the Power Rangers season. But I have to bomb drop the Fear Cats on my wish list, because Mig and Bigelow, Benlow, something like that. Yeah, they were the most they were the best batch of villains from the Overdrive villain factions out there. And I've always wanted to see them as action figures in the Lightning collection. No matter, despite that the endless possibilities for future figures were always up in the air, since we're still occupied with more Mighty Morphin figures and some SPD figures more, and Dino Thunder and Dino Charge and them being worked up and in space, because, Operation Overdrive will probably come much, much later down the line, because despite Hasbro wants to go for, which is understandable that Hasbro wants to focus on the more popular Ranger seasons like Mighty Morphin in space and the rest, SPD, and save the least popular seasons like Operation Overdrive for much, much later. And with a much least popular season like Overdrive, I guess I can wait for the Fear Cats to happen, because I do want to own those two, maybe in a 2-pack, because they do work together as a 2-pack rather than have Mig and Binglow separate. And what I always loved about their designs, even within the series, that from what I've noticed, their counterparts, and especially when in the context of Power Rangers, and what I liked about Operation Overdrive's villains was that their designs would be modeled after past Megazords and stuff from past seasons leading up to Overdrive's Overdrive's Zord designs or so. But what I liked about the Fear Cats, especially in their black armored forms, they were modeled after the Red Dragon Thunder Zord and the White Tiger Zord from Mighty Morphin, but for the Fear Cats. And I think that's probably why, because the vibes of the 2 leading Thunder Zords in their warrior modes for the Fear Cats, and that's probably why I want them really bad. So I can wait for them to come out. since after all, they are the best villain faction there was in Operation Overdrive. Okay, so Power Rangers Jungle Fury once again. Now, onto the Jungle Fury villain side of things. I didn't want the Phantom Beasts or, well, yeah, the Phantom Beasts or Grisaka or Jellica or Carnosaur, but I was thinking more of the main two villains, later antiheroes, that had the most humanity out of all the human-looking villains. That would also have some armored forms underneath within the franchise's history. That being Jared as Daishi and Camille. And I was thinking, I don't know if I should, I was really specifically wanted to do Daishi, but even when I was, rehearsing to do what I said I was going to say in this video, but I think in the final video recording, I was thinking, nah, maybe I should include Jared, Daishi, and Camille both, because they were both in love with each other, and stuff. Despite that, Camille was always getting kicked to the curb, and Daishi was getting all the training and all the power, and harnessing all the, like the Zokato and all of the other types of ways of the Order of the Claw and all the beast, the dark arts of the Pai Shui and stuff like that. And that's probably why I think Daishi should have been the most desirable at this point. Now, I do want Camille as a Lightning figure, but even though I do remember when Jungle Fury still had their original line of action figures in 2008 by Bandai America, back when Bandai still did do the toys for Power Rangers and during Jungle Fury, but that was back when I wasn't collecting Power Ranger toys much anymore until Megaforce. But I digress. When they did have action figures for Jungle Fury, they actually did manage to do action figures for Camille and Daishi, but I think they probably didn't sell as well. So hopefully for Hasbro's Power Ranger figures and for the Lightning collection, and when they do any Jungle Fury figures, let's just hope for Daishi and Camille. But we don't even know whether if Daishi and Camille should be in their costumed forms, where they didn't show their human faces, or show their unmorphed forms first in figure releases, and then later the armored forms, and even their Phantom Beasts, their upgraded Phantom forms that they had, like Daishi with the more gold to his lion armor, and then Camille with the Phoenix form, which I do want to see them do for the two, and or if you can't do the human forms of Daishi and Camille, you can just always do the armored versions. I don't care, just go with it. And then lastly, for the Disney era for Power Rangers Lightning Collection figures for RPM, again, because, knowing my gripes about the RPM villains out, not other than Venjix, I know some people would think I want to wish I would have a Tenaya 7 figure or a Kilobyte. Now, Kilobyte did have a cool design, but I just don't like his character, despite how much of a traitor he was and how he always talked down in a sexist tone toward Tenaya in this debut episode, that being, of course, obviously that girl power episode, the Dome Dolls. But in Crunch and Shifter, well, obviously I don't know what to make of those two, but if they do the figures for those guys, I will collect them. But what I really, really want from RPM from the Lightning Collection is Venjix. But what version of Venjix? But when I get the Beast Morphers, knowing the fact Venjix and Evox are both the same, or basically the same character, but they just had two different names, two different forms. But I would prefer, since Venjix had two bodily forms, I would think that I'd rather see them do his most booming barbaric Viking looking form from the final few episodes of RPM with all that black and gold. Because I've always preferred Venjix's final form, where he looked like a big barbaric Titan-sized Viking, because he just looked really awesome that way. Then, as opposed to his red and white form, red and white android form, which was his first bodily android form, but his black and gold Viking Conqueror form was probably my all-time favorite form of him during RPM, and especially in the near end of the season. Because I want to see them do, I want to see Hasbro do this Vengeance rather than that other version of Vengeance right around the Gold and Silver Rangers debut story arc. But because it's just, there's something about that Vengeance that we had in the final endgame arc of RPM, because they wanted to treat it as though RPM was the end of Power Rangers, which that was what the goal was, even though Disney wanted to cancel the series after RPM, which they did. But I feel like it was for the best they should do this Vengeance than as opposed to that other version of Vengeance. And then when we get the Vengeance as, basically Evox's Cobra android form in Power Rangers Beast Morphers, even though when we do get that Evox in his bodily formed self, we will also get that down the line soon too as well eventually. Alright, so now Disney era Power Rangers for my wish list for villains from that era is done. On to Neo Saban, because there's not many choices that I can think of for Samurai and Megaforce. But we should start with Power Ranger Samurai, because there's one particular villain, and I know some of you are going to think I chose Master Xandrid in the wish list. Knowing in fact, fuck Master Xandrid and the rest of the Nilox. Well, okay, except for one. And of that, considering the actor and his recent crime, which we should just leave out from what he did character-wise, Decker. But Decker in his Nihilok form, not his human form. Even though, yeah, we have Decker in his human form, but I was rather figuring more like if they should do an action figure of his Nihilok form, because, like Rita Revolto earlier in the video, I am a sucker for Power Ranger villains that have this ghostly skeleton-like form going for them, and bent to them too. Because now, as much as I still don't like Samurai and Decker's obsession with battling the Red Ranger all the freaking time, but it's part of his character, and whenever we do get a Jaden as the Red Samurai Ranger figure in the Lightning Collection, well, Decker will be right on cue and right on time for a figure release for that, because Decker... Now, I can say what I want about Samurai with some of the characters and all that, but as much as I still don't like Decker's character and his obsession with his sword Oromasa, Oromasa and all that, I must use my blade to destroy the Red Ranger and all that, and, stuff like that, I hope the Red Ranger tastes the blade of my sword, and, stuff like that, that, Decker always kept saying all the time. But personally, Decker would be a great figure to have, because, again, the stuff with Rick Medina should be put aside and just focus on wishing we would have action figures for both his characters he had over the course of, a decade in Power Rangers between Wild Force and Samurai. So we should just, anything correlating about what Rick Medina did should be put aside, should be left aside, and focus on Hasbro doing action figures. But again, like going back to the Wild Force thing with the Red Ranger, even though I didn't have him on my wish list, instead I chose the Yellow Ranger. But for Samurai with Decker, I do want a figure of Decker where he is in his Nihilok form. You can put out his human form with that fur trench coat and all that later, just like in the form of the standalone Andros with the hood figure release for Target stores. That they did recently for In Space with Andros in his civilian form with the cloak from KO35. But Decker, I would love to have as a figure, because, he did have a cool looking design, although his character just sucks. Okay, then you get into Power Rangers Megaforce and Super Megaforce, but okay, well, obviously Megaforce's villains are the most boring villains I've seen imaginable in Power Rangers, and despite what I've said about Megaforce as a series, correlating to if I want any characters from that season for Lightning Collection figures in the future, and what would be my most wanted figure. But give credit though, Vrock is my most wanted figure of the bunch, because of all the Megaforce villains, of all the Megaforce and Super Megaforce villains, Vrock is my number one. Because The heck with Emperor Mavro and Prince Vicar, Princess Elvira, or Metal Alice, or the Messenger, or Admiral Malcor, or Kreepox, or any of those guys. But Vrock was, despite given his history, sadly, Vrock is the only villain in Megaforce that was the most fleshed out and most followed villain of the 2 seasons. Although Vrock only appeared in only 2 pre-Ultimate episodes of Super Megaforce, which was an episode, a 2-parter that was pre-Ultimate before the Legendary Battle extended version. And since I like Vrock and what he had done strategically and how crafty he was with his motivations of trying to take over the Earth and also defeat the Rangers and everything else, and the way how he made alliances with multiple villain factions like the War Star, and then the pollutant mutants of Biggs and Bloofer, then Metal Alice, the Messenger, but then on his own with 2 other robots or so that he had on his side for the Vrock is Back 2-parter, when he also possessed Robo Knight to go berserk and evil on the Megaforce Rangers in Super Megaforce when Orion was out of the picture for those 2 episodes. And of all of the Vrock figures, though, but since he had like so many different forms during the 2 seasons of Megaforce, I actually would love a figure of Vrock from his final appearance during Super Megaforce when he looked like this anti-demigod angel looking form with all of the blue streaks and the black suit and all that and those angel wings behind him. And it was a cool form too, because again, it's the kind of Vrock figure I would love to have in my collection before I do any other figure of Vrock, like his first form and then all of those other forms he would get later. So again, Vrock, the only villain in Megaforce that matters, because the other villains of the 2 seasons of this 20th anniversary shitfest of a farce of a season of Rangers don't deserve my buck. Period. Okay, so then we get the Dino Charge, Power Rangers Dino Charge. So Samurai Megaforce, I got my choices for those. When I think about Dino Charge and its colorful cast of brightly colored villains, and as much as I like Dino Charge and its Rangers and villains, there's so many villains to choose from that I would love to have as a Lightning Collection figure. Since, after all, Hasbro had been doing Dino Charge lately, would it be best if they focused on the villains in the meantime while they finish out the rest of the Rangers? And hopefully if we do get Heckle as the Dark Ranger, like I've seen in the Boom Studios Power Rangers Beyond the Grid story, and even him as the Dark Ranger playable wise on Power Rangers Legacy Wars, I was hoping they should do Heckle as the Dark Ranger, but that's besides the point. Evil Rangers, they can wait until a future wishlist video on the podcast. But since we're going on long enough like I did last episode, because there's a lot, because again, Power Rangers has 29 seasons, 29 mainline seasons under its belt, and it's going to take an hour for me to talk about all of those characters I would love to have per season in the Lightning Collection. But okay, now thinking about Dino Charge though, as I was dubious about this, obviously, I essentially will love a 2-pack consisting of Sledge and Poisandra, because now Sledge and Poisandra, well, since if we can get a Rita and Zed 2-pack, if we got a Rita and Zed 2-pack, would it be nice if we had a Zed and Sledge and Poisandra 2-pack in the vein of the Rita and Zed wedding pack we had in 2020? Well, because again, Dino Charge, given their motivation, given Sledge's motivation with the Energems, since he's a bounty hunter and all, intergalactic bounty hunter, if you will, and then Poisandra, well, she's always in the background. She did fought the Rangers on occasion a couple of times and stuff like that. But Poisandra, I would love to have her as a figure. But even though I nearly wanted to get that 2-pack from that Power Rangers Mega Collection pack thing that they had at Walmart's and Toys R Us's before Bandai lost the license and when Toys R Us went kaput, and when Power Rangers still had the deed with Toys R Us and Bandai and all that for some certain toy exclusives, that back when they did do those type of packs, Mega Collection packs, that they did have a Dino Charge Red Ranger bundled with Poisandra And I'm going to regret not getting that Walmart exclusive 2-pack of Dino Charge Red with Poisandra. It should have been a Sledge and Poisandra 2-pack instead. So hopefully Hasbro should do that for Dino Charge to make up for all that lost time I couldn't get with Bandai's toy line for Dino Charge, since after all, of all the pain and stress I had trying to get all of those action figures for Dino Charge and Dino Supercharge. I mean, with Heckle and Snide and Fury and all those guys, and then the Vivic Foot Soldiers, but man, I just could not collect that all. So Sledge and Poisandra, I can see them do this for a Lightning Collection 2-pack. Like Rita and Lord Zed, go for it. Because after all, when I think about it, in Dino Charge, Sledge and Poisandra were like the Rita and Lord Zed of the season. So, if you can put it simply that way, even though I really would love a Poisandra mostly in my collection, most indefinitely. Okay, so Power Rangers Ninja Steel, once again, since I didn't see the season at all, but after hearing some tidbits of mixed feelings about Ninja Steel. But okay, now on to the one villain that actually shined the most during Ninja Steel's 2 seasons. Madame Odius. Now, obviously, Madame Odius, I'm glad thank God I didn't choose Galvanax, because he sucks ass. But Madame Odius, since she was our first leading big bad villain since Queen Banshira in Lightspeed Rescue, it would be nice to own Madame Odius. Even though her Sentai counterpart in Ninja was male, but it's like a unisex type villain suit. It doesn't matter who is in that suit, male or female, but it's really more predominantly female in Power Rangers, with the name Madame, because Madame is a plural name to refer to a female, older female mostly. And Odius, I would love to own her as a Lightning Collection figure, since even though I haven't watched Ninja Steel, but she would be nice to have. That's all. Okay, and last but not least, on to the recent era that we're in with Power Rangers, with Beast Morphers and Dino Fury. But let's start with Beast Morphers first, because now Evox, like I mentioned, because Evox is Vengeance, because spoilers for people who haven't seen Beast Morphers' last few episodes from its 2nd season. And I really wish that they should have done Evox in his main form, outside of the Cyber Cobra form that he had. Scrozzle, I'll pass on Scrozzle. And then as for like some of the monsters, some of the 2 monsters I got from those basic figure line of figures for Beast Morphers, which I did a review on, which is probably one of my most highest rated Power Ranger toy reviews I did in 2020. Now, since we had Blaze and his Lightning Collection figure 2 years ago, common sense, if you're going to do Blaze, you got to do Roxy. Okay, because Roxy is one of my favorite villains in Beast Morphers. Actually, now I know that most of the, I know Blaze was great. Blaze was a badass. He was always, going at it with Devin as the Red Ranger. But when it comes to our female villain who has a evil avatar behind her and was once a girlfriend to the Blue Ranger, but of course, the evil avatar, to separate the evil avatar Roxy with the real Roxy. Roxy had also rivalry with Zoe, the Yellow Ranger, despite she's still boyfriend-girlfriend with Ravi, the Blue Ranger. Basically, Roxy was Tenaya 7 done right to me when I was watching Beast Morphers. Because you know why? Because I think a lot of you probably don't know that I'm in the minority of those when it comes to RPM and when it comes to characters from that season. I never liked Tenaya 7. And Tenaya 15, when she had the cybernetics implanted thanks to Kilobyte, because again, that was them rehashing how Astronema went brainwashed completely with the cybernetics, but for Tenaya. But Roxy was Tenaya done right, but at least Roxy wasn't much of a show stealer like Tenaya was, and always chewing up the scenery like Tenaya was. Because at least with Roxy, she actually did not get on my nerves. And I also I love her actress too, because, you know, she did a great job on the character and how smug she was and how cocky she got at times, and especially, you know, doing the whole crazy ex-girlfriend stuff with the Blue Ranger, despite, you know, Ravi keeps dealing with the evil Avatar when the real Roxy is still in suspended animation. And even though I do have her basic figure, but I want a Lightning Collection figure treatment of her greenish yellowish form, and then if they ever do a purple repaint of said form available, because I do want that to come out one day. If not, they'll just come later whenever they get around it, because Beast Morphers have been put on pause for the Lightning Collection because Hasbro is so busy giving us more of the fan favorite older guard Ranger teams like Mighty Morphin, Lost of Galaxy, Dino Thunder, SPD, and In Space in them. But again, I gotta have my patience when they get the rest of all these other characters. But they'll just do random choices of what characters will be in what wave, because that's how Hasbro plays. They're not like Bandai when they would put out a bunch of stuff. And finally, we get the Power Rangers Dino Fury, because again, since I'm currently not watching that season as of right now, and like I said about when I chose the Green Ranger, you know, what other popular character from Dino Fury should deserve his or her own Lightning Collection figure? Void Knight. And Void Knight is on my wish list because I do have his basic figure also, but I do want a Lightning Collection treatment of Void Knight as well, because Void Knight was basically Dino Fury's response to Korag, because, you know, given his similar aesthetic, his similar design, although Void Knight has little silver on his design, more not silver, purple, little of purple on his design, and more of silver to him with that purple silver knight type thing. That's why he's called the Void Knight. Although again, I haven't been watching Dino Fury, and I know that when I do start watching the season, I know I'm likely not going to like it, but Void Knight does have a cool design. I like his look, but it's just, I don't know how I feel about the season as of currently, because again, I have not watched Dino Fury, but I would love to own a Lightning Collection figure for him anyway. So in final thoughts, that's my roundup for villains I want to have in the Power Rangers Lightning Collection, from Rita Revolto to Master Vile to Divatox to Trakina to Frax to Roxy to Venjix to, you know, Void Knight, to all of those other villains I chose. That would be my must-have figures for the Lightning Collection for the villain side of things. Next time, in part 3, tune in for tomorrow or whenever this week for my choices for my wish list for Power Rangers Lightning Collection monsters. Even though we only have like a few Mighty Morphin monsters, but I gotta excise what are my most wanted monster for Mighty Morphin, and of the 3 seasons and all of them later. But anyway, until then, that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night, because it was a long time recording this overnight to do this. But anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys soon.